found this book last year, and the concept was so ridiculous that we just had to pick it up. At that point, it was a little bit too late for us to do it in Vampire Month 2016, so we thought we'll save it for Vampire Month 2017. And here we are!
When she said we, she looked at that book and she was like, this has vampire Nazis. I'm like, it's probably not going to be very good. And she's like, it has vampire Nazis. And I was like, all right, whatever you want.
I pick it up. Okay, I pick it up. Because I'm like, oh, this looks like another generic teen fiction. And the very first line in the jacket is something along the lines of when Hitler released the vampire plague. And I'm like, well, that sounds like our cup of tea. Because why just read the usual paranormal vampire fantasy romance?
Well, no.
Let's change it up a little bit. And the funny thing is, the vampire plague and the German Nazi vampires, not the most ridiculous thing in this book.
This book starts off with Sophie Harkness.
Oh my god.
Reference one of a book full of references.
I'm just gonna say, that kind of was, I wouldn't say it was off-putting, but it was a little bit weird because Dracula canonically exists in this world.
Yeah. It's a thing.
Later on, when she's using a code name, she goes as Mina Harker, and I'm just like, lady, that's way too close to your real name.
We're trying to hide, you're not doing it very well. So she's living her life. She lives on this island called Haven, and what has happened in the world is there was a vampire plague, it got released in the Nazi death camps. So there's old ones who are like ancient vampires of evil and blah 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 blah. They end up helping the Nazis release this death plague by accident, and it spreads out of the death camps and through Europe, turns everybody in its path into vampires except for people called immunes. Their blood poisoned to vampires. They try to fight back. They don't do a very good job in Europe. They do a slightly better job in the Americas, but eventually they're just like pushed back and they have to make a treaty with Hitler in order to kind of maintain a society. They're pushed onto a Caribbean island called Haven. This is where they all live as they try and raise their population in order to push the Nazis out of the whole world.
Yeah, because the eventual plan is to take back the world because it is rightfully ours, and those vampire scum and blah 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 blah. Have as many babies as you can. And one of the other characters makes this really good point. It's like, they're never gonna let our population get to the point where we could do anything. Like they're just gonna keep us here on this island. And so there's trade relationship with the vampire populations, and like life is okay.
Yeah.
You can go on a trip to New York City and be touristy. Like, it's okay.
But it's not as good as it could be.
Yes, because everybody wants the good old days back. Interesting stuff about this book, like weird kind of cool world building, is the characters are obsessed with 50s, like 40s and 50s movies, and there are just like offhand comments about, I liked Bette Davis's work before she became a vampire, and so that stuff I kind of liked. That was fun.
But those are like at the beginning and then you never see them again and
yeah,
you're like, whatever.
Plot kicks off when Sophie's best friend is found murdered on the beach.
And it's implied that it has something to do with vampirism and there's a plot going on, and Sophie's like, I don't know what's going on, but there are secrets and I must find them.
Which sets off the basic pattern of this novel is Sophie wants to know a thing. People tell Sophie not to know a thing. Sophie finds out a thing. One of the like 7 people in Sophie's life dies. Which leads to Sophie wanting to find out a new thing, which leads to somebody else telling Sophie, don't look into that thing, which leads to her finding the thing, which leads to the next person on the chopping block.
They're also like, no, you don't actually want to know this. And she's like, yes, I do. And then they're like, no, you don't actually want to know this. And then she goes and does something stupid, and they're like, why did you do that stupid thing? She's like, I really wanted to know. And you're just like, guys, just fucking tell her.
So much would be made, like, so much would have been stopped if, like, someone sat her down and just kind of, like, exposition dumped at her. And I think the novel could have been cut down at least 100 pages if...
At least.
Yeah.
Like, the whole first half of the book could have been right out the door.
The big conspiracy, the big thing that people are trying to protect is...
So, the way biology works... History of the world right here. Okay, so what happens is, you know, most people in Haven are born with immunity, which means they can't get the vampire plague, blah, blah, blah. But occasionally, like every, call it like 4 or 5 births, there's a non-immune born. And so the administration has secretly been, like, taking these babies away if they're not stillborn, giving them to the vampires and letting them use them as a blood farm because vampires need to live on, like, at least a little bit of human blood.
It's explained that vampires mostly live off of animal blood, but yeah, there's, like, nutrients in human blood. And when our main character finds this out, it just, like, ruins her existence. And oh, how, it's like,
I can never go back.
Honey, they're vampires. Like, this was... It's awful, it's horrible, it's
yes,
creepy.
Yes, your administration sucks, but also that is how you've managed to keep an equilibrium. Like, are you gonna start hating the vampires really? Because most of them are just your average Joes on the street, like, didn't want to be vampires.
It's a very fine balance that once you start picking it apart, it kind of starts to fall apart a bit.
Yeah, it's a very hard line to walk. You can't hate most of the vampires because they're just people trying to live their lives, and they've been stuck in this really shitty situation.
Because on Haven they're told, like, all vampires are Nazis and blah 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 blah. No, they're not.
And of course, like, the Immunes committed horrible acts of just
everyone did awful things.
Yeah. The other thing that Sophie kind of finds out is, like, you know, there have been people who've tried to figure out the secret and they've all pretty much died. One of them was almost her mother. Her mother ended up getting, like, injected with the vampirism plague because her immune system was down while she was pregnant with Sophie, so Sophie's like a half vampire.
See, that was my favorite part of the story, and I really kind of wish that the novel was more focused on her mother. Like, if we got the story from her mother's perspective, and I wouldn't say it would be a YA novel, it would be more kind of just like a straight horror novel, kind of looking at the horrors of, like, being a mother and the horrors of pregnancy, because she didn't really want the second kid, she didn't really want Sophie, but then she keeps her, and she's going crazy, and she doesn't know if she's going crazy or if it's something the doctor's doing. It's an insane sense of paranoia, and, like, that story done well would be terrifying.
Yeah, it would have been excellent.
Yeah.
Instead, her mother's, like, relegated just to, like, a backstory of stuff that the administration has done.
And a bit of foreshadowing.
We'll get to that. Sophie and Val, because she's dating a vampire. We forgot to mention this on the outside, but she's dating, like, the one vampire on the island. That's how you know she's the main character.
He is the representative of the Nazi party. He is like the ambassador, but he's not really a Nazi.
He's secretly working to undermine the administration and start a rebellion and
But what Chelsea's really excited to get to is...
Val has fucked her mother, her grandmother, and her!
He has a type.
And it's the women in the Harkness family, apparently.
So he was sweethearts with Sophie's grandmother before the war. And then he gets turned into a vampire, he comes back, and she wants nothing to do with him because he's a monster. So then he comes to Haven, where he meets Sophie's mother, and it's kind of implied that he wasn't in love with her, but he kind of used her as a stand-in for, like, the love he's lost, but she was really in love with him, and that was one of the pressures on her, and then she dies, she becomes a vampire, it's this big awful thing. And then he meets Sophie, and he falls madly in love with Sophie, and...
Like, we're meant to be together, and...
I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, and, like, I can feel it, like, things are gonna change because of our love, and you're like... He's like an awful character in that he hasn't had any character development. When we first meet him, Sophie is just, like, trying to get over, like, the death of her best friend. Like, her best friend has just died the next day. She's being harassed by the police who think she's done it, and they meet on the subway train. He does not say, I am sorry for your loss. Like, nothing. He just like, hey, baby, how you hanging? Glad to see ya. Yeah, I heard about your friend's death. You're like, buddy.
He's very aloof. It might have been better if they were friends.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
I would have believed a friendship more than a relationship, even though I do really like books where the relationship isn't the focus of the novel, but there just wasn't really a relationship to stand on. You keep telling me that you're in love with him. Show me that there's a connection between the two of you, because I'm not seeing it.
And they've been together for a couple of years, but you barely get a flashback from him. Any flashback is really just, like, expositional. It's not helpful or, like, to create a romantic connection.
Sophie goes up to visit her father. He's admitted into a mental hospital, and when she's driving back from the hospital, she's shot. She ends up in the general hospital, and she sees something. She sees her best friend's mom with, like, a weird machine, and she goes upstairs and there are labs. It weirds her out.
She's like, something's very wrong.
Something's very wrong.
People are trying to kill me.
So she decides, okay, you know what? I am going to get to the bottom of this. I am going to get on an airship. I'm going to go to New York, and I am going to find answers, god damn it.
You're like, okay, I think the novel's finally going somewhere. I'd be okay.
So, you find out that Sophie's mom had a sister, and the sister's immune system crapped out. I think it made a lot of sense where it's just like, okay, you know, when you get sick and your immune system's really bad and you get even more sick as you go because you can't fight off other infections. This happens, doesn't happen often, but it does happen where someone who isn't immune their immune system will crash and they will contract the vampire plague and become vampires. This happens to Sophie's Aunt Isabel, and instead of being killed as they normally do, Isabel's mother talks to Val and is like, deal with this problem for me.
And out she goes.
Isabel gets shipped off to New York. Then you find out that during Sophie's mother's pregnancy, she was being injected with the vampire plague because her immune system was also crashing. She turns, she gives birth to Sophie, and Val picks her up and ships her off. But she's kind of a little bit crazy, like she's gone into like the full maternal kind of like horrible, monstrous mother figure.
I liked that.
I did too.
That was probably my favorite part of the entire book.
I wish it was given more time.
Yeah.
Because she is this complete agent of chaos. She comes back to the island every once in a while. She's watching her daughter, and then when her daughter goes to New York, she's kind of like in the edges.
She's feral. That's what she
Yes.
is. She killed the best friend, like because, you know, she thought that she was a danger to Sophie. Like, she's not in her right mind, but she's got her super protective instinct of Sophie, so she's like her constant stalker. So anyways, in New York, you know, shit goes down, and Sophie realizes she shouldn't have come to New York because it's a Nazi stronghold, and shit's going on, and she meets her aunt Isabel, and they go on this quest to figure out what is going on with those baby things that she finds, and she ends up in a Nazi base in like Antarctica, the Arctic Circle or somewhere.
And they see the like blood bank people, and then they meet an old one. And then the book just adds another level of crazy on top, because you find out that vampires aren't from this world. They're not from this reality. It's not like they've come down from space. They have been exiled from their world into this one. And all they want to do is they just want to go back. And Sophie
has magically been injected with old one sperm?
Yeah, so you find out that Sophie's mother was being like modified in a way to give birth to Sophie, so Sophie could give birth to the like chosen one that will lead the old ones back into their reality.
And this is when you completely lost me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, surprise, you're already pregnant. Remember when you were in the hospital like half a book ago?
And it's so offhand. It's just like, how did, like, she's like, how am I pregnant? It's like, things happen in the hospital, honey. And I'm just like,
no! Please explain. And it's not even like Val's kid and she was like screwing him and she got pregnant. No, she was injected in the hospital.
It feels like it's a different ending that's been slammed onto this book. And then like kind of like taped a bit.
Yeah, doesn't fit.
I think this book would have been a lot better if it had more focus. Like, it does so many things, and it just keeps trying to, like, make it bigger and more ridiculous when...
It's trying to be, like, shocking and surprising, but it's just getting more and more unbelievable and ridiculous.
And some of the twists, yes, you see them coming, and other twists, you don't see them coming, and it's not, like, good, like, shock. It's like it doesn't fit.
You couldn't have predicted this because
there was
decent plot wouldn't have included this. I did not miss this theme in teen fiction where it's like pregnancy, because like most teen fiction books that deal with pregnancy are like teen pregnancy, and they're like in the realm of like sci-fi. Like, it's a book about teen pregnancy. That is what it is. I do not miss like random pregnancy plots in teen fiction.
The pregnancy in this book kind of removes Sophie's agency. She's no longer the main character. She is going to bring the chosen one into the world. She's been relegated to a side role in a narrative that we thought was focused on her.
She's now just like a womb.
Like, I really liked the elements of like the horrors of motherhood. It was nice and it was cool. It gave me flashbacks to Rosemary's Baby. But now you're just like, but it's okay, right?
Yeah, no biggie.
You're gonna be fine. And like Sophie's thinking like, oh my god, like my mother was in a very similar position and she went crazy. What's gonna happen to me? And it's just kind of like, no, you must do this. This is the prophecy. This is
the savior. You can't just, not want the savior.
Val dies.
Which I'm like, yay, get out, please.
He proposed to her and I'm like, you're doomed. It fell apart for me at the end. I was like having fun with it and then it just kind of like... off into it skipped off without me.
Yeah. She goes back to Haven and she's like, I guess this is my life now.
Yeah, and she's
wish I didn't know what I knew. It's ridiculous. I can't do it. I can't deal with it. The parts that were good, but they weren't worth the parts that did not work.
I think that there is definitely potential with this writer. Who knows, the next book in this trilogy might be great, because it might be more focused. I don't know. When I was reading it, we both talked about this, there were a lot of kind of like similarities with The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. If you're looking for an alternate historical fiction novel, then pick that one up. That is probably one of my favorites. And it kind of does some of the things this book does a lot better.
Because this book is referencing that book. So.
Yes. Right down to the whole having the alternate history book, alternate history book, No Haven in Darkness.
A book about our world. And they're like, this is how the world should have been. And the character's reading this and they're like, oh, well, I don't understand any of this, but somehow this doesn't, but somehow this seems real and like the world should be. And you're like, so this is just an alternate reality? Like, what is going on? It's clearly not a novel. It was a bit of a mess. Yeah, all in all.
It was okay.
Yeah. Not anything I'd, like, recommend to anyone.
No.
It's like a mashup of The Man in the High Castle and The Strain. And as a concept-wise, mashing those together, perfect. Actually works. Kind of surprised, but yeah, somebody should do that. But this one, not so much.
So yeah, next year I think we're going to pick up Dracula versus Hitler.
See? Okay. Fine. Give that to me.
Okay.
All right.
So did you guys read this book? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Happy Vampire Month.
Bye, guys.